Thinking about what we declared when we became a sovereign nation? That no man, woman, or child shall ever be slave or bondsman? That no labor shall be exploited? That no life shall be frustrated by deprivation? Wondering if we truly understand what means as inheritors and successors of the family of violence? Consider that freedom is not only the essence and the absence of chains, it is the presence of stewardship. Tonight, we're going to think about it with intentional thought, not partisan, not nostalgia, not emotional theater. We're going to examine how national resources must be structured to sustain a free people.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About. I'm Dale Happy Knowles, your host, and joining me this evening is Captain Prescott Smith. No stranger to the Bahamas and maybe around the world, but we're going to have a very, very, very thought-provoking conversation tonight. Under the tree, casual. Tell us where you're at. Let us know what you're thinking about so that we could tailor our conversation so you could be a part of it. Welcome, Prescott. How you doing?
It's great to be here with you, Dale, and to my fellow Bahamians and friends of the Bahamas from wherever you are. I think we may have people tuning in from Atlanta, Chicago, in Panama, in Colombia. Yes, just sharing it out with persons, different parts of the world.
That's awesome stuff there, man. That's awesome stuff there. So, just so people will know that you're a seasoned Bahamian environmentalist, professional industry leader, and you set out your whole life of adult life, I think, if I remember right, doing what is right for the Bahamas and the people of the Bahamas and the environment. How does that journey make you feel, having done that for so long, and all the accomplishments that you have gotten along the way? You still there? Oh, look at you froze. So Captain Smith is, like I said, he's the industry leader. He goes around preaching what the Bahamas has and what we are able to. Go ahead.
But to use in a sustainable way. You know, like a Native American, one of the great leaders said, our survival is dependent on nature's survival. And so, for me, conservation has got to be about how do people become empowered with the environment around them, the resources around them.
Cool. So we want to talk a little bit tonight, and we're going to pivot it around, if I could pull it up. Pivot it around this quote that I have here on the screen. And we say here that we are inheritors of these islands, no labor exploited, no life frustrated by deprivation, and our national resources must be governed to sustain a free people. And so we have two questions for the audience so that they can get familiarize themselves or familiarize us as to what they're thinking from this quote, from something to think about this quote, what we think about the show, and it's what natural resources near you holds an untapped ownership opportunity and what would you like to see so that those resources enable ownership instead of dependency? So we want you to answer those questions in the chat. And as we see them pop up, then we'll try to address from your perspective what you are looking at and wish to see. So, Captain Smith, you were on last time with a buddy, and we went through deep dive on a lot of things. And so today we want to dive into a walk through the islands, understanding what are the national resources that are available per island, and how we as a people, including individuals, could tap into that and create ownership. Because, you know, since the Penn administration, I don't think we have had a sustained, keyword sustained, access process of creating more millionaires and more wealth in the country for people of the Bahamas. And
You're absolutely right, but I like to talk a bit about that, because that's not accidental.
Oh boy. Go ahead.
Yeah, so when you look that impacts us here in the Bahamas, I recognize that it's not obviously unique to the Bahamas. So you look at the economic model and where it originated from. So if you look at how countries, England, France.
You're dropping off. Prescott, you're dropping off. Your signal dropping out. So we're not hearing in between.
Yes.
You're dropping out. I don't know if that's
dropping off.
Yeah. So we missing.
Are you still able to hear me?
We can hear you now. Yeah. But just about everything you were saying just now was.
Yeah. No, I was saying to you the economic model. Yeah, the economic model we follow in the Bahamas is one that really, it doesn't serve the interests of the majority of our citizens. It serves the interests of a small minority. And when you look at where that model came from, you'll see all the way from the continent of Africa, those countries like Portugal, Spain, England, Germany, France, and of course, those are the same countries that conquered the Western world, including the Caribbean. And so if you look at control of resources, and the majority are just there to, I would say, kind of the crumbs. And so even though we have an extremely wealthy country, and, you know, Mr. Pinling era, they did some great things. You got to look at what they were up against. They built some institutions. But I think we fell asleep at the wheel here in our country. We still allow a small group of minority who have controlled the economies to continue to dominate and exploit the majority of our citizens. And they reward a few, there's a few new faces who help to maintain that system at the end of the day.
Right. So what we want to do then is use this opportunity we have today and your knowledge to, like I said, walk through these islands so we could see what we as a people could tap into and create some wealth. Because if the small group is not really assisting or catapulting the rest, then we need to find ways to do it ourselves, right?
You're absolutely right, Dale. And, you know, this is a very important show because what I find trying to bring this information forward and receiving so much pushback is how this system is maintained in our country, in our region, is most of the citizens are aware of the country they live in based on how we were educated. So we hear about sun, sand, and sea.
Right.
And so when you talk about the wealth on these islands individually, that completely changes the game because the Bahamians need to be educated that this country is extremely wealthy. 85% of our wealth is in a marine-based environment. That's most of the country. Bahamas is actually a big country. It's an ocean state. And so we grew up here in the sun, sand, and sea line, but we don't think about these individual islands and the natural wealth that they hold. So, for example, let's look at the southern Bahamas. From Morton Salt was exporting salt in Inagua. If we as a citizenry had owned even 25% of that company or 50%, we would not have any national debt that we have today. Just the wealth generated from the export of salt, not just for 30, 40 years. And yet, Morton Salt was paying the government, and you talk about $10,000 a year, and that went on for decades. So if you look at the math of that and think about the true value of what they're selling that salt for, salt is like the fifth element of life. You can't live without it. And so we don't think about salt and preservatives, the purest form of salt in every hospital around the world. You think about de-icing, whether the airplanes are landing in Chicago or in New York, on the roads, in water treatment facilities. It's one of those things in life that every human being needs it. And the food industry can't survive without it. So salt is in our day-to-day lives in so many ways. And that's just one. So you had not
So
just
before
Inagua.
you
Go
go
on.
on to the other ones, though, there's always this argument that people throw on the table that, well, you know, we only producing the raw materials, and so it has to be refined elsewhere and stuff, and so, like, the value that we have is just like we say raw level, and so when they are we going to invest in refining it? But salt is something that basically is already shelf ready. You might do other things to it, but at least there's a level of salt of where we could use the salt that they have us in here in the Bahamas right away in order to generate revenues. Is that correct?
100% correct. So think about all the top chefs around the world, fine dining restaurants. What is the number one thing you hear about when it comes to sea salt? And yet we don't think about how valuable that is. Then in the medical industry, pharmaceutical industry, hospitals is another example to emphasize further. Salt, there's so many ways, and you're talking about incredible value of our natural salt. It's not just Inagua. You had major salt production in Ragged Island, in Exumas, in Long Island. These were major salt operations in the southern parts of the Bahamas. And that's not to mention the amount of marine resources that are extracted from our waters. So much of it we actually don't even know the extent of the rape that takes place in our country every year because not documented the resources in our country. And mean, it's not documented. No, we can't look
Right.
and say, do we know what all the marine life, the plant life, the bird life, what's beneath the surface of the sea, 100 feet down, couple 100 feet. There's so much resources in our country. And
You
just
think
the
that it's not
general,
documented, or we don't have the information that is documented? Because I mean, we got people traveling here backward and forward all the time. Some of them on permits and some not, and I'm sure they're doing research. A lot of them, maybe some,
you're
speculation.
absolutely right when you say it's whether we have the information. So I'm talking about our benefit,
Right.
because that's
Okay.
the whole idea of your show, to educate Bahamians about what it is that we have. And I want to share something about that, Dale, because I remember at one point I was appointed by the cabinet of the Bahamas to serve on the Council of the National Trust. And these families who control the economy, they're not interested in Bahamians really being educated about these things. So you're absolutely right. The information is documented out there, and the information is not readily available to the citizens, the majority of the citizens of the country. And that's to paint a certain narrative of sun, sun, and sea. Your tourism model, how many jobs you're going to create. And while so many islands are being sold off in the Bahamas by those who dominate the economic space in our country. So it serves them pretty good. It doesn't serve the majority, but that's for your original point. We do know that so much of it is documented. It's just not available to the majority of the citizens.
Right. Okay. So looking at the questions on the screen, talking about it from inheritors to stewardship, and the preamble, which calls inheritors and successors. What does stewardship of national resources look like if we truly take that inheritance seriously?
Yeah, first of all, it's knowing the true value of these resources and stewardship in terms of how we manage them for the benefit of the citizens. Again, we have to shift that model from benefiting the few to using these resources so that the country uh, benefits overall. And so that's a serious issue that needs to be addressed, because you'll find that we have many examples where we're making decision about resources in our country that serves the interests of a few, and we're
Right.
doing some major damage permanently because making decisions along that line. So, for example, Dale, let's just say where I live here in Andros, and me and a couple of my buddies, we want to go and mine limestone, but we want to do it in an area where it will destroy the freshwater lands. And while the few of us are going to make millions of dollars, once we destroy the freshwater lands, that only is not there to benefit you. Let's say you're a farmer who's growing tomatoes, cucumbers, strawberries, and many other things. So at the time I destroy the freshwater lands, but me and a few of my buddies have enough millions that we
Yeah.
can go and live somewhere else.
And I want to pivot right
But
there.
you have to suffer the consequences.
Right. I want to stop right there for a second, because when I think it was Dr. Chris Curry on the show, and we were talking about the saltwater railroad and that historical impact that the Bahamas had on the whole movement and elevation, emancipation, etc. I think it was him, and I may stand corrected. I have to go back to the tapes to figure out. We now on 168 interviews or discussions. But I think it was him who said that, or Chris Davis, one or two of them, said that the fresh water table that is in Andros is the origin of the whole freshwater, I won't call it belt, I don't know what's the proper name, that runs through the whole Caribbean down to the bottom there by, I guess it's Venezuela and all those places. Are you aware of any of that being so?
I'm not so sure where all that fresh water is run, but it's certainly the abundance of fresh water we have here, Dale, and how you have the largest concentration of blue holes in the world that run all through this island. Where that fresh water is discharged, honestly, I can tell you from my own limited experience, I've seen many areas where it's being discharged. I don't know where it all leads. Again, that comes back to the research that is needed in so many. Because I could take you to an area, for example, in Bowen Sound. I remember growing up when we would go spear fishing, and just about every shoal that we jumped over to try to spear lobster, you can see a blue hole there.
Wow.
And then you'll see when the tide's falling, fresh water pumping out. That's coming from inland. You see? So you're right in terms of the fresh water is moving somewhere, but also you have to bear in mind the natural geography here aids in producing more fresh water in terms of the limestone being a great filter, the pine forest, the annual rainfall. All of these things contribute to the production of fresh water.
Cool. All right. So, no exploitation on resource structures. It declares that no labor shall be exploited. This is the preamble of the Constitution of the Bahamas. What resource structures today risk turning participation into exploitation?
This is one area that really bothers me because the exploitation it's beyond criminal that's taking place in our country. So when you think of the issue of various mineral resources, sand, the aragonite, the calcium carbonate, which is all of them fall under. So you have limestone, aragonite, sand, and they're all different forms of calcium carbonate. So the export of limestone going into more than 11 ports in the United States, and yet not $1 shows up in our annual budget. And we're talking about billions of dollars worth of limestone that leaves this country every year. And you can see that even if $10 showed up in our annual budget, or $5, in 5 or 10 years, which is treason to me, but not even $1 shows up at the end of the day. And there can be nothing outside of criminal to describe that level of exploitation. Then you talk about...
Before you leave that though, so the opportunity in that would be to tax it or to just change it? I'm sure there got to be a contract for that. I mean, that can't just be somebody just digging it up and taking it without, because we could see.
Well, the contract, if it doesn't serve the interests of the citizens, because first of all, Dale, wherever I'm extracting that limestone from, there is an effect.
Right.
So, and again, I would use an example here of Andros. If you're a big farmer in Andros with 100 acres of orange, grapefruit, you grow tomatoes, but all of a sudden, I want to extract limestone in the freshwater lands. once I damage that, that means you're
Right.
going to have salt water to be trying to water your crops with. So if you're going to be exporting limestone in the tens of billions of dollars, the citizens of the country should be benefiting from it, because you're going to have to live
Right.
with the consequences of how you extract those resources.
Yeah. And I'm asking, how can we benefit from that? What is the mechanism that we need to agitate to get, or even activism to cause that mechanism to be put in place? What is the
It,
mechanism that will work?
it starts with what you're doing, educate, because most Bahamians aren't even aware of this. Even living right there on Grand Bahama, people don't even think of these mining operations and what they're actually doing. But very good question. Uh, I could change it in a stroke of a pen if I was in the position politically to do it, because the minerals beneath the surface of the ground, that belongs to the citizens. It's just that these things have been happening because of corruption.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's written in stone that, if you're digging down 50 and 100 feet beneath the ground, those minerals belong to the state. And it's just that we didn't have the will to enforce these things the way we ought to. And a lot of that is not by accident. There's economic motivation
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
to maintain the status quo, but that certainly is the challenge we've been faced with for decades now.
Well, one thing I've seen, particularly in the last, for with this administration, at least they're having the conversation on changing some things, and it mightn't be everything we want to change, but when I think about the fact that 60% or more of this election coming up will be Gen X's and below, or newer or younger, then those, particularly Gen Ys, the millennials and the Zs, they don't think anything like baby boomers, like which I fall into at the very bottom, and even Gen X's, who was the promised generation, which we just bypassed, and didn't really pay attention to them at all as to what their contribution was. And so the things that you're saying, I'm thinking that those newer generations are very much in tune with, and their response isn't going to be the same response as a Gen X's or promised generation responses, who had some avenue like myself in actually building a nation, but never really materialized the full promise of the first fireside chat, etc., that's been Lyndon and those sat around and promised the people that we were going to build this country towards, which is articulated in our preamble. And that's why I like our preamble so much, because it's very clear what the intention was. Now, execution in this country is a serious challenge.
Serious challenge. Dale, but I'm being fair even to you and to, because before I learned about this, I could understand how most Bahamians would miss it.
Right.
Because we grew up here in Sunshine and we see the beautiful beach, Riga Hotel, peanut colada,
Right.
lying on the beach with an umbrella, right? And when I started traveling in the Defense Force and seeing things, I still wasn't clear about it. But what really, like a light switch being turned on for me, was when I tried to bring the information forward and then running into the roadblocks, the potential bribes, all the pushback, the threats. And so that's how I got into really studying it beyond the borders of the Bahamas, and realized that the Jamaicans were faced with exactly what we're faced with when it comes to bauxite, other mineral resources they have, or Haiti with its gold and many resources. Or we can even look at Venezuela with all its oil. But of course,
Mm-hmm.
they got minerals to no end there in so many other areas. So those are the things that helped to open my eyes to realize that we were deliberately being miseducated to focus on a certain area. Because I
Mm-hmm.
remember, and I don't need to call any name, but these are
Right. Mm-hmm.
examples, these examples that I know firsthand. I remember bringing in a friend of mine from the US, and he went and spoke to one of the oligarch families. And she said, if you educate the masses, they'll know the value of the land. And he spoke as if he was someone who believed in segregation and so forth. So she became very comfortable speaking freely.
Mm-hmm.
But and he said to me, he's a Prescott, he said, wow, I had to experience this firsthand to understand the depth of what you were talking about. And so when I tried to share information about the wealth that I was seeing out there firsthand, it was just met with a lot of pushback. So I understand how the majority of our citizens
Mm-hmm.
got where we are. But after I went to cabinet and did first presentation, second presentation, I realized then that we had no more excuses because the information was shared with our leaders. And so what they choose to do with it, it was totally up to them. And
Right.
what I
Right.
saw was it's like the way you have this show, there wasn't that willingness to ever open this information up to the majority of our citizens because the few wants to continue to benefit from it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I realized that, as I told you, that mindset is not unique here to the Bahamas.
Right.
It,
No. No. That's understood. And another part to that is, a lot of them who sit around that table don't understand, and I find when a politician don't understand something, they stay far away from it or silent because they don't want to be seen to be this way. But if we look at it from now, and that's what I'm saying, if the new generations have a different view, then my energy is spent on how do we tap into their mindset and help them understand, which is what this show, this platform is all about, trying to educate particularly the youth, and help them understand opportunities that they can have in the Bahamas so they don't have to contribute to this drain brain thing that people is talking about. And they could, because they always say that, they're not doctors, lawyers, and accountants, and so they don't have an avenue to live in their own country. And I'm thinking that we have so many opportunities, but we're just not tapping into them because we, like you said, we're not trained to be that way other than when we were in a fishing village of sorts. And so if we look at this frustration of deprivation, then how must our natural resources be governed to actively prevent this deprivation? So what does these young persons need to do or
well, well, let me
learn
give
so
you,
that they could benefit from this? Yeah.
you asking something, you asking the $1 trillion question, Dale, and I want to share with you how others are aware of our wealth and it's kept from the majority of our citizens deliberately. So I want to share here with you, read something. And I
Okay.
think by reading what Bahamians can see is coming, here is the US Embassy that sent this out. It says routine message, unlicensed fishing charters, US Embassy, Nassau, Bahamas, February 20th.
Okay.
All US citizens, boat owners, and captains do not operate a fishing charter in Bahamian waters without a license. Obtain all necessary charter licenses from the Bahamas Port Department. And what they're actually telling you is that, unknown to the public, Bahamians are not aware of the thousands of charter operations that are operating in our country. because of our rich marine environment. And these charters in different forms. For example, there's the mega yacht that can charge, $1 million to $2 million a week. And they're running a business. But a lot of people just think, oh, that's the owners of the yacht. No, the Bahamas environment is ideal because of the natural beauty, so many islands, turquoise waters. And then there's the sports fishing yacht. And then there's the open fishing center council. All of these categories, and I can name a few more categories. We're talking about not just a few $1 million here. And then we went for a meeting in New York, and we were told by tourism officials that there were 3,000 foreign homes in Exuma alone running as illegal business.
Wow.
Now, it's back to your question about what does the young Bahamian do? All of these homes are being built in our country around the marine environment. So I can show you a site in Exuma where a guy has over 12 houses from Canada, and he's charging $1,200 to $1,400 a day for each one of those homes, minimum. So while we think it's just the big hotel, there are thousands and thousands of rooms running as businesses in our country, while the majority of our youth are wondering how are they going to make it in their country. Now, that's just where I build a home in Exuma or Eleuthera. It boils down to going on the beach, snorkeling, going and catching fresh tuna, red snapper. The list goes on, but it's all around the marine environment. Okay? So the opportunities to say you got not just 10, 20,000 boats coming in our waters and you don't have 100 Bahamian captains. You can see the maritime industry is a huge sector untapped for the citizens of our country. And it doesn't mean, Dale, that you have to be a captain like myself. You could be someone who's a broker who is booking those $1 million, $2 million charters. And then there's the professional chefs. There's the engineers, all of the different levels. There's the captains, right? We have to train our citizens. And then look at all of the spin-offs when it comes to technology. You have companies like Magellan, Garmin, where it's the styling. They're doing a lot of research. They're logging things down in our country, and they're making a fortune because Garmin then sells an updated app to all the yachts annually. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
They know where to find all the fishing drops. They know how to navigate their way through. All of these things, the generation that you're speaking about can be exposed to the potential when it comes to technology. But we should be teaching our children how to navigate. I don't think no child in this country should go to school and not learn the basics of navigation in a country where 85% is the marine environment, and then we have 85% of our citizens who can't swim. That's a problem.
Yeah. And we teach each other not to be afraid of the water because the 85 can't swim, and so those who want to be adventurous and go into the water, there's people they discourage them, and so we have to get beyond all of that.
Yes.
Right.
Well, the point I'm making about this deal, it's just that we live in a country with 85. We're gonna have to decide either we're gonna try to maintain real ownership of this country, or it's going to be taken away from us based on our own actions.
Yeah.
Because if you train the next generation to stay away from the water, and then you have thousands of people coming here who are benefiting from the water and are building businesses all connected to the water, what is going to be left for the citizens?
Right.
They go
And
to the U.S., they migrate to some other part of the world, and then while the family islands are being populated with persons from South Africa, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, and everywhere else.
yeah, and whilst we being xenophobic or even anti-conquistadorish, etc., um, you know, I remember my brother had a friend or friends in his class, and he's saying to us, when they graduate from high school, all of us was looking to see if we could get a car and a this and stuff, and their parents was insisting that they get a boat, a Boston Whaler, right? And so I say that to say, I think it's what 100 to 140,000 square miles of ocean, whereas we only have what 5 to 8,000 square miles of land. So to me, our whole educational system should be focused on enterprise from the sea, and that's
It's
why I
it's a
have that as
huge
one of the
potential.
pillars in the new built environment. And so that's what I want us to walk through these islands so that people could see. Because one time ago we had things going on all islands, and then it seemed like everything became central to Nassau, and everything then became controlled by those who had the jump start in Nassau.
Exactly. 70% of the population lives in Nassau, and they are being fed by those who have the monopoly on food distribution, who control the ports, who control the banks. And it's insanity, to be honest with you. We have to make a dramatic shift, and that's why a show like yours, we have to reach that age group that you're talking about, because let's be honest here. I find a lot of Bahamians who are elder, the elder Bahamians, it's like trying to bend a tree that they'll say, yeah, yeah, yeah. But in most cases, it goes in one ear and goes out through the next.
Yeah.
And I would rather a, a very important show like this, and I mean, we're talking about including all Bahamians,
Right.
but at the same time, you would be able to get the attention more of all by getting thousands and thousands of those 20 and 30-year-old Bahamians, even younger, to be tuning in, where we show them this wealth and, dispel all this deliberate miseducation about the country not having these resources.
Well, I'm not one to look the government to be the savior, right? Because governments come and go. I mean, the government is one continuous government, but the administrative of the government comes and go. And so I don't think that they all have, first of all, they don't all have the full understanding as a team. You might have individuals in there who have not even a full, but a big level of it to make it impactful. And then the private sector, who might have the capital, like you say, might have their own special interests that they're looking at and stuff. And to me, there's nothing wrong with any of that, but there has to be some level of national development happening and growth and wealth growth happening.
Well,
But so,
I do have a problem with it, Dale. And the reason I'm saying
no,
that
I don't
is,
mean I have a problem that there's an imbalance, but I'm saying that people have what they have and they try to make it more for themselves. I don't have a problem with that, but I have a problem with the fact that we're not growing as the majority rule intent was, in order to have equal access for everybody.
well, here's the issue. Here's the problem I have with it. I don't begrudge. Let's say, Dale, you have $500 million. You have to
Right.
look at the fact that where are you where's your wealth derived from? Okay, so if you're generating your wealth from the limestone resources of the country, and you're not paying income tax, I mean, let's just say
No,
If
that's
you,
a problem. No,
yeah,
I'm not
if
doing that. I'm
you
not
if you
knocking
have
that. I was only
500
referring to that. Yeah.
million and you're not paying any income tax, let's say in the United States, and I'll put you in a 10% tax, that means $50 million the government would get out of that 500 million,
Right, right.
right? So, what is wrong with you going to the University of Bahamas and setting up an endowment for engineering and the sciences,
Right,
right?
right.
So, if you're not paying income tax in your and I'm coming into your food stores, I'm buying your products
Yeah.
and so forth, and you're telling me that the population that's spending hundreds of millions of dollars with you, that you can't look around New Providence and see a decent civic center. You can't
No,
see.
no, I have a problem with that. That's the part I have a problem with. That's what I'm saying. That because I got in a heated argument with somebody about 5 or 6 years ago. They were pissing me off because they kept complaining about the so-called D average coming out of high schools, and that it isn't good for their business and they can't advance the business. And so I said, well, what are you doing with your profits in order to improve what's coming out of the high schools, right? How are you investing in high schools and the children and stuff like that? And you know, they told me that that's not their responsibility, and so you know, I went off on them. But you know,
And
so
you should have gone off on them.
I understand that part of it, and that is necessary. But what I'm trying to get out is we have this adverse attitude from people of means, let me put it that way, right? Who can, because you have some do it for the university. I know my the Better family from Better morticians, they invest in the children, etc. I know some other families on the other side of the fence, etc. Who are very lighter than me who do it, but that is not in abundance. So I agree with you. I have a problem with that part.
But you can
But
clearly see the imbalance in the society when you
yes,
talk about, because if you go to Chicago or you go to New York or you go to other big cities in America, you'll see the spirit of philanthropy is alive and well. And the United States have a system
that's the
that
key word
forces
right there.
you, when you create that kind of wealth, you have to find a way to give it back, or the government's going to take it from you,
Right.
right?
That's the part I
So
was going to touch on, right?
yes,
We have to
exactly,
create that system.
that
And
system.
that's why the question on the screen now is what role does government have if a sovereign democratic state? What duty do government carry in structuring access for this national resources, right? And that same thing you just mentioned, governments are supposed to create environments for success. And
Yes.
that I'm thinking natural resources are one of the easiest sources of revenue that is sustainable without causing harm to the citizen,
And
because
we have
taxes
so
cause
many
harm.
resources. I'm going
Right.
to tell you, I listen to the talk about, I'll give you an example. Our, our marine environment, you couldn't put $1 trillion on it. It's a joke in terms of its true value. So when you think of sea, think of salt, molten salt, right? Think of what's in that marine environment, whether it be the queen eye snapper that's 1,500 feet, or the mystic grouper that can be 1,000, 2,000, or the swordfish, or the shallow water species. And we could go on and on with that. But billions of dollars worth of seafood is extracted from our country every year under the guise of recreational fishing. And yet, the Bahamian public are not aware and say, look, these resources belong to us. If a boat come into this country and they're catching tuna and they're catching mahi, wahoo, and you hear all this noise about paying a $500 a year boating fee.
Right.
And when you do the math on that, Dale, that's $1.20 something per day for 365 days. And I went and did my own research, and I said, well, they could pay $500-600 to the marina per day, but paying the Bahamian people $1.29 per day, it's too much. When even the marina is built on the seabed that belongs to the citizen.
Right.
The boats are going out there to catch lobster, grouper, snapper, tuna, wahoo. The list goes on. Hog, snapper, you name it. And then what about all the garbage that comes into our country? Why are we not charging an environmental tax on every boat? They're pumping their gray water. They're pumping their sewage, the disposal of their garbage. And yet, so it bothers me how the message that we send to the world that one of the most beautiful countries on the planet, that we ourselves have to think so much better of it when it comes to its true value and being stewards to take care of it properly. It's back to your original thing, stewardship, right? So when I hear them talk about boating fees, and I'm thinking in 2026, we're not charging $1 environmental fee. Like, Dale, what about all the tons of garbage along our coastlines throughout the country? And we know that some of this is done by international boating, but some of this is done by us.
Right, yeah.
Do we ask the commercial fisherman when he goes out, what does he do with the garbage? What about the poachers coming in? And see, I can speak honest with you about these things because being on the defense force, I got to see where we had to be educated about not to throw the garbage in the water. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here like a hypocrite and tell you that it started out right with me. I got to see it when the change took place. I could imagine the thousands of boaters out there where that change was not taking place. So when you throw it in the water, it's coming up on the coastline. It's falling on the seabed.
Right.
And Dale, you want to see something here? You will be shocked if you go right by Porterski and you go east of that. You can pick up tons of garbage off the seabed.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you what I'm.
Yeah, no, I remember in high school we used to see stuff like that when we used to venture in that part of the area, coming from school and everything. So I could just imagine what it's like now. So what do we want the government to do for to enable that access? So the young people, I know we have SPDC, whatever, and those who are doing these different programs, but to me that's a small.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's not enough. I'm not criticizing it.
Right. Yeah.
It's nowhere near enough. I don't like to see
so
things.
What you said a stroke of the pen. So what kind of strokes that the government could do in order to enable it for a wider portion of our society?
The stroke of a pen, I would implement an environmental tax on all boats in the Bahamas. I would use millions of dollars of that resources to clean up our coastline, education, educate the citizenry, the boaters coming in, how to dispose of things properly. With a stroke of, let's just use the term the stroke of a pen. That's one thing. The stroke of a pen. Every cruise ship visitor coming in this country has an impact on the environment, the ships themselves.
Yeah.
I would implement, don't just tell me you have 12 million visitors. So let's say 10 million of those are cruise ship passengers. And there was a $20 environmental tax, right? That's a couple $100 million right there.
Right.
Now, so you have the resources to build a proper recycling plant, education of our country from proper disposal of the waste around us. So we have to be bold with making this decision, and the world will respect us more. It's not going to drive people away, but we just can't say we're collecting money, Dale, and it's just going into a big pit.
Right.
We have to be
intentional.
Very intentional with what these resources are used for. I'm telling you, with anglers who I fish, they're like Prescott. It takes about $150, $200 million to fill one of my tankers. Why is your government not charging us an environmental tax? We're using our waters. We know what comes up along the coastline. A lot of the debris comes from big ships, right? So there's if I was in the position, Dale, with a stroke of a pen, let's say I give you the contract and we're going to allocate so many millions to this. You're not just collecting the garbage from the coastline, but you're documenting the type of garbage. And then you could gather from that, 5% of it is bottles, 15% of it is plastics or glass, plastic, so much is aluminum. And therefore you know how to target in terms of educational programs, how to dispose of these things properly. Another thing, when we talk about a stroke of a pen, I would transfer all mineral resources in this country that the citizens are the rightful owners. And that means I can legally then negotiate every contract in terms of the seabed, the extraction of the sand, the extraction of the aragonite, limestone, and taking them from the right locations, because you can't just suck up all the sand of the seabed. There'll be no conch breeding ground.
Right.
So that isn't just there, and it doesn't serve a purpose. It serves a very important purpose. So you have to know where you're taking it from, the volume, and all of those things you can do, again, with a stroke of a pen. I would have the University of the Bahamas and BAMSI engage in a complete audit of the resources of our country and invest in Bahamians. I would send, again, with a stroke of a pen, create scholarship for at least a dozen minimum Bahamians to go study hydrology, ornithology, botany, marine biology, all of those key sciences, which means that when they come back to the Bahamas, they are a part of setting up the proper structures within governments. Because it's disgraceful when I think of Department of Marine Resources. The Department of Marine Resources should look like the Smithsonian in terms of a proper headquarters. It can be a facility that makes millions of dollars. Because imagine the tourists and people all around the world who can visit a facility like that, Dale, where as you walk through there, you can see every type of snappers. You can see black snapper, yellowtail snapper, hog snapper, lean snapper, queen eye snapper, silk snapper. Then you go into the grouper family, the jack, the this, the that. People will be in awe. Then you can all the paraphernalia that goes along with it. Then the students doing the research, the tourists visiting, the Bahamians in general. And
And
you,
that's students being paid to do their research, like it happens
you,
in other parts of the world.
you got it. So this is the kind of thinking that we have to implement, not looking at those children in Montel Heights and Yellow Elder and writing them off
Right,
as if
right.
if they don't go to St. Andrews or Life at Key. I mean, you have some of the most talented people in the inner city.
Right.
They need to be shown the true potential of the Bahamas and the beauty.
Very cool.
Dale, I remember we brought some students from the inner city here. It was an Indaba program. And all those children, they stayed here at the lodge and learned how to swim. We took them out, did cleanup campaign in the mangroves. And they took them out to catch fish. They learned how to clean the fish. But you should hear some of the comments. When we took them to some of the most beautiful beaches, some of the children were literally intimidated and asking if they need ask permission to go on those beach. And I said, no, all of this belongs to you. This isn't Life at Key or passing
Right, right.
where you're deep in your psyche, you think you're not good enough. And yet this looks way better than Cabbage Beach or Life at Key. And it's right here, the Jolter's Keys.
Right.
It's your beach. Go and walk on it. Go and swim in the water. So, but you should see what was so inspiring for me, Dale. I remember this young man who everyone was commenting as if he was Fox Hill bound, you know. And yet when I saw that young man, he was on his way back to university into North Carolina. Well mannered. And he said, you know, that trip to Stafford Creek Lodge, it changed my life. You see what I mean?
Yep.
Because of what he learned about his country, its true value.
And he felt like he belonged. And so that's what motivated him, which is good.
You got it. Yes.
Which brings us to the next question, which we talk about the guarding against the economic bondage, right? And so the preamble rejects bondage, as we highlighted earlier. And I'm going to play the preamble at the end, so people who don't know what the preamble says, you could get the full picture. But what modern forms of economic subordination must be guarded against in resource industries?
Repeat it for me one more time, Dale, so I could be very clear.
What modern, it's on the screen too. What modern forms of economic subordination must be guarded against in resource industries?
What needs to be shattered in this country is the majority of our citizens don't feel that they are true owners of their country.
Okay.
They just feel that they are here to serve in the most medial way.
That's why they're rebellious then.
That's why they're rebellious. And if they had a sense of ownership, and that's why I keep going back to that stroke of a pen.
Right.
Because when you think of assets, the Norwegians feel a certain way about their country because they know that the resources of their country are used to their benefit. It belongs to them. So if you look at all this wealth that we have in our country, and if the little child in Baintown thinks that he can never own a yacht or a decent boat to take his family out, that is totally out of reach for him. And yet the people come here from all around the world because of the richness, the beauty of his or her country. And so we have to find a way to give our citizens that sense of real ownership, and it can be transformational for them to know that, you know what, these resources that have been exploited for generations, I now have ownership. When I see a truckload traveling on the streets in New Providence carrying limestone or carrying sand,
Right.
that I have a proper system set up in our country that even if the citizens got 10% of that going into a fund, and that fund is used for education, healthcare, so forth,
Right.
that totally changes the psyche of the young male who's holding that Guinness bottle, who thinks he has to go and rob because he has no voice in this country. It's only for those who are dressed up in suits and tie and,
Right. Right.
and so forth. So the young lady who thinks she has to, belittle her body for just a few dollars, the next number she can go and buy at some gambling. These are the things that affects our citizens when it comes to how they value themselves. And you could see why they think like that, because being very active in trying to bring this information about our true wealth and seeing the opposition that I've received for decades. And I'm thinking, I'm aware of these resources. So imagine the average Bahamian who just looks at Atlantis or looks at Bahamas. It's a dream come true for them to go and see it whenever they can, without even thinking. The success of these property is because they are in our beautiful marine environment.
Right.
Everything prospers around our marine environment or benefits from it, like that.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's Atlantis or Bahama or somebody building a house in Lyford Key. Those things only have the value because of the environment that we have here.
Right. And I always say that, all of the successful businesses in the Bahamas leverage volume, the millions of people or dollars or whatever. All of the small business and the rest of those struggle because they don't have that economy of scales. But when we look at the whole picture then converting our inheritance into ownership, how do we convert share inheritance into real ownership opportunities for Bahamians?
Yes. I mean, again, because I've studied this for so many years, I can
And
see.
by the way, folks, sorry to cut you off, Prescott. Captain Smith is a scholar. So don't think he's just a boat captain with a lodge who connected with a couple of people, learned some things. He's done detailed research and information. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've studied resources for 30 something years all around the world, because geography is something I was always passionate about. And I've said this, and I'm going to say it here, that if I was at the United Nations and you bring all of these so-called professors from around the globe, no one can refute what I'm going to share right now.
Okay.
Most of the living things on Earth is between 30 degrees north and south of the equator, right? Africa is the largest landmass in that geographical belt. Most of the mineral resources on the planet are on that continent. The world survives of that continent. It's not only the mass extraction of resources from Africa. Those who colonized and exploit that continent exported that model to the Western world, to Australia. So if you look at where the native people are, North, Central, South America, you will see those who dominate these economies came from England, Portugal, Spain, Germany, France, the Dutch, you name it. But the point where this all leads is they know that the wealth is in the global south, that they need to survive in the global north. Whether they're drinking coffee in the morning or tea, or whether it's the gold, it's the diamond, it's the platinum, it's where most of the agricultural land is. You and I know, Dale, that an orange cannot grow in Alaska. It's a tropical. And so that's the reality. So if you know your true value, and this is exactly what we fit in here in the Bahamas, we are not a small country. We have to break the misinformation, the deliberate misinformation. We are a huge country, but we are an ocean state.
Right.
So once you begin to see yourself, we are not just 700 islands, sun, sand, and sea. These are absolute deliberate marketing, the colonial tourism model myth. Our tourism industry was never meant for us to be owners. So we have to be honest and tell the citizens that while we have these gold mines, it was meant to follow that same model. We have a job, and so you'll hear the politicians talk about how many jobs. It's always the next big development to be the savior of the country. I'll give you an example. During the Stafford Sands era, they said touristic development and marinas. Ask yourself the question, imagine if Bahamians that own the majority of marinas in our country. Imagine the Bahamas if we had 10,000 professional captains running the yachts. Imagine the Bahamas where the citizens have true ownership in the mineral resources of the country. Imagine the Bahamas being a global leader when it comes to maritime sector and the professional citizenry in that space. Imagine the Bahamas being the global juggernaut when it comes to research in the tropical marine space, marine biologists, all of the scientists. Imagine the Bahamas where our university is attracting people from around the world, BAMSI, because of the unique resources we have here.
Right.
And so when you see the Bahamas and realize that, the United States of America, with 300 plus million citizens, the only place they have bonefish swimming on the flats is in South Florida. And that little area is not even 5% of the flats in the Bahamas.
Wow.
Well, it's not even 5%. I'm being generous. But yet, we would sit here and think, oh, they have 300 million people. They are big. So we have more of such resource than Mexico, Cuba, Venezuela, the United States, Canada, Germany, France. None of them could compare with us. Let's go to our coral reefs, our seagrass. So when you look from outer space and you look at Google Earth, Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder can see that no place have the amount of shallow water. So the seagrass that exists in the Bahamas, the coral reefs, the United States do not have what we have with these resources. And so once you recognize that 300 million, we don't have 500,000, but yet we outstrip them when it comes to these particular resources. That's how we have to see our true value. And Dale, you know all of this information. Let's look at our airspace. Let's look at all the big ships coming through here. Let's look at our region and say, what if the people in the Caribbean had 20% ownership in the cruise ship industry that has been exploiting us for decades? They're using our pristine environment, they're dumping their garbage, and yet they're carrying on like they're doing us a favor when we're the ones allowing them the opportunity to use our many islands throughout the Bahamas, our beautiful beaches, our pristine, environment for them to snorkel, fish, and yet, what are we actually getting for it?
Yeah. So, my thing on this whole thing is that we need the foreign investment, yes, and so forth, on injection. But my thing is that we need to tap into that and not to say we're just taking stuff from other people who have money, because I don't subscribe to that. I think we should build ourselves to have money. And part of that is, I believe, like in Aruba, people can't own properties on the coast, particularly in the tourist areas. That is by state, and they lease it for like 99 years kind of thing, and then they roll after that. So my thing is, we should have IPOs, initial public offerings, for all substantial foreign direct investments, up to say 60%, because we know we don't have the capacity to keep pace with all of them. So it's not like we can own people's businesses initially, etc. Right? So, but at least it will help us build incremental wealth to be able to do things with that money that could take us out of these scenarios where we're going to be fighting about whether we have a living wage or a minimum wage and all that kind of stuff. Because like you mentioned, there's so many opportunities where even if you're not the owner, which we want to get towards, at least if you're working in the industry in those areas, you can still create wealth, right?
Exactly.
So when
But
we look at this, sorry, go ahead.
Dale, you and I are on the same page with this. We're not talking about this attitude that people should just come and invest and give us their stuff. We're talking about
No.
we're talking about a partnership to recognize that you're bringing in capital,
Right.
but our resources also have value.
Right.
Okay? And if you don't see, let me give you an example, Dale. If you're in Greenland and I know that you have the platinum minerals there, but because I'm bringing in cash, does that mean that your platinum or your gold has no value? So our gold mine and our oil well, our platinum is our rich environment with many resources.
Right.
And so here's the issue I have to show you how if you don't stand up and know your value, you will be continuously exploited. No one goes in the United Arab Emirates and expect that they would own the majority shares in anything.
Right.
No matter how much money they are investing. And guess what? They make huge profits because they know the value, the true value, and they know that the people know the true value of what they have. So if you could build an Atlantis here where the citizens are not the real owners, and you could build the exact Atlantis in United Arab Emirates where 51% is owned by the citizens of the country. You see the difference?
Yep. And that's what I'm talking about. Right.
Same thing with the cruise ship here. If you're going to use our islands, it should be a partnership between the Bahamian people and you.
And
At
that
the end
doesn't
of the
stop
day,
them from making money. That's the key.
huh?
It doesn't stop the foreign persons, the investor, whether they're foreign or Bahamian, from making money.
For
That's why
making
this
money.
investment. Right.
Because you got to look at it this way. All these investors coming in here, back in their home country, they invest in businesses, and the government is taking 20 to 45% tax from them. So what's wrong with the Bahamian people saying this has to be a partnership because you are using our resources
Right.
to generate revenue, and it has to be a win-win for both of us in order to even maintain what you have. And that's the message that we're sending that really bothers me, is that we can talk about new investment and we say, imagine, Dale, if we're importing 10,000 tons of garbage every month, what's going to happen to the next generation? Where are you going to pile up the garbage in Long Island, Iglutra, Exuma, Andros? Or are we going to take that attitude for recycling and teaching the little children to look after the environment? Not this culture of you have this function and everybody throw the litter on the ground and you come back and try to clean it up.
Right. Right.
I'm going to give you an example of what is happening in our country in a school here where people came here from Pennsylvania. The Mennonites have a little school in North Andros where their children go to. And on the side of every desk, they have a Velcro little half-a-gallon container that they put the trash in. And a child have a task each day to empty those bins. And they stick it right back to the side of the desk. But yet, you could go in their schoolyard and you don't see a piece of paper, a can, or bottle. They're not superior to our children. It's just a matter of, are we going to teach them from small to not be littering and caring for the environment and know the value of it? Or are we going to continue to, you can just throw the can and the bottle out of the window? And that attitude transcends in so many other areas. That means you then end up giving away what you have because you just only see some cash coming at you as value. That time you're so rich, but at the same time, you undervalue what you have in yourself for so little.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Because of need, right? You got Maslow talk about the levels of need, and so when people feel that they below these levels, then they have to fight for just basic security and shelter, and so then they feel that because they're at that level of the place of need, then they don't have no value, and so they could just throw things all over the place, but they feel that, okay, that didn't have any value. But that's taken away from other things that could cause them to generate more income, right? So I want to play the preamble. Let me find it very quick.
The Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Preamble. Whereas 481 years ago, the rediscovery of this family of islands, rocks, and keys heralded the rebirth of the New World. And whereas the people of this family of islands, recognizing that the preservation of their freedom will be guaranteed by a national commitment to self-discipline, industry, loyalty, unity, and an abiding respect for Christian values and the rule of law. Now know ye, therefore, we, the inheritors of and successors to this family of islands, recognizing the supremacy of God and believing in the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, do hereby proclaim in solemn praise the establishment of a free and democratic sovereign nation founded on spiritual values and in which no man, woman, or child shall ever be slave or bondsman to anyone or their labor exploited or their lives frustrated by deprivation, and do hereby provide by these articles for the indivisible unity and creation under God of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
So, to me, that is significant. And so we ask the question here that making the preamble real, if we are serious about the preamble's intent, which we just highlighted, what must change in the next decade to ensure our natural wealth sustains the free people?
Dale, here's the question before I answer that. Let's say there's 500 classrooms. I'm just throwing that number because
Okay.
it could be more around the country. How much of those classrooms you think you could walk in and see the preamble on a plaque in there?
Probably 3.
Exactly my point. The same thing on as simple as a card that a person could carry around in their wallet, or carry, the student could carry, so you can see where what you're doing here with this program, how important this program is, bringing that level of education in all those different spaces. That's what's going to change, because the preamble is very powerful to listen to it, but when you hear that, the reality is those who have exploited the majority of our citizens, no wonder they will never take $1 from their resources to get those plaques put in every classroom in the country. Because then the little child in Montel Heights begin to realize that he too can own an island in the Bahamas,
Right.
and he or she can run any yacht and own them. So listening to that, you realize it's very powerful, but the hypocrisy of it is how it's deliberately being suppressed in our country. And I said, you being very nice when you say 3, because to be honest with you, I grew up going to school and we never ever once repeated that in school. You see what I mean? And
Yeah,
I
but
went to
I was a
Bailey.
little blessed because I had Carlton E. Francis as my math teacher. And we
Yeah.
used to study math for the first quarter of the class. He tested us in the second quarter, and then the next half of the class, we were studying Bahamian civics and stuff.
Well, you had a very unique. You had a teacher who was very active in civil rights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're an exception. You're an exception to the rule. But I went to school in Andros. I went to S.C. McPherson. I went to C.W. Sawyer, S.C. McPherson, R.M. Bailey. And they were pretty good schools. I mean, when I think about, R.M. Bailey, you have to be very particular about a clean environment around. You're wearing white pants, right?
Right.
So everywhere you sit, you have to make sure that the chair was clean and so forth. But I never once had that read, you know what I mean? So that shows you that the work out
We
there
have
to be
a lot
done.
of work to do. And I
Each of
guess the
us
Prime
can make
Minister
it.
keeps saying that. We have a
Huh?
lot more. The Prime Minister keeps saying that we have a lot more work to do. And people think funny of it, right?
Yeah, and I agree. It's not, I remember the former Commodore of the Defense Force said something to me, and that's our good friend, Butch Cavallo.
Yep.
And he said something that really was
That's my big
powerful.
right-hander.
He said something that was very powerful. He said, Prescott, he said, you got to think you've been making a lot of progress, but sometimes we just want all of this to happen in our time, right? And realize, just like you say, Carlton Francis did his part, you're doing your part. This is powerful what you're doing. This is nothing trivial. You'll be amazed to see just people hear you, the preamble there. Just like me, it really hit deep. And I realized I'm like, maybe the project should be to get that on a plaque at every classroom. I mean, those who will allow us to put it there, because some of those classrooms.
Well, even the government buildings, because you got all these people faces up on every building, so just put the preamble below it, or on top of it.
I get so bothered with these politicians.
Anyway, we ain't get distracted, Prescott, because we already an hour and a half in, so let's see if we could get down to some of the more nitty-gritty here. So the question still on the table: what must change for us to have this natural wealth sustained for a free people?
But first of all,
show how much things we have that there's no reason we can't be free with all this investment. But what we need to change.
First of all, we have to. And that's a very powerful question that you're asking. We have to re-educate our citizens that we're more than sun, sound, and sea. We have to get that education out there that don't just think of resources as oil, diamond, and gold. We have resources that are equally valuable, and in most cases, even more value, because you're talking about renewable resources, right? So we have to not see the mangrove and
as bush.
Bush, exactly. We got to look at that and say, that's plenty baby lobster and grouper and snapper coming out of there. And for generations, that. The other thing about very deliberate about the citizens benefiting from the resources of the country, and then that funds being used. Another thing about changing the psyche, that there must be a national commitment to cleaning up our environment. And no one sees themselves as being, if I'm the prime minister, I could put on a hard hat with a coverall and say, just like in Rwanda, I have one day out of the month that, we can implement a program. Imagine, Dale, if you pick up one piece of trash a day. You would be amazed to see how it'll start disappearing around you. Wherever you are, just one. Everybody can do their part.
Take a picture, you picking up and throwing in the garbage.
Exactly.
Maybe that could go viral.
Yeah. That could go viral. That's what I'm saying. So you could see many, but your original question about while we have to do those things, we have to be very deliberate with the key things that brings economic benefit to the citizens overall, reducing the cost of living. And I'll give you the many examples you can do. Dale, if I was representing you in your constituency, I could first have professional assessment of all the energy use in the home. And you can start by saying, okay, we're going to have either tankless hot water heater or solar heater on every home. And that savings can go towards being able to buy better quality food, paying school fees, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So there are many ways that we can empower the citizen. Even if I take $50 or $100 off your electricity bill, that can go to taking out, you and your whatever, better out to having a dinner date or
Right,
whatever.
right, right.
So another thing would be creating antitrust laws to reduce the cost of living straight across the board. We have these ruthless monopolies that claim sovereignty over the entire country from New Providence. And yet, what are they actually giving back to these family islands when all the mail boats are? You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And those are the things that maintains that high cost of living on our citizens because we don't have antitrust laws. And what bothered me, Dale, again, I won't call the name, but I had the CEO of Procter and Gamble speak to a prime minister of the country and shared how they can reduce the cost of living by implementing antitrust laws. Like if you're a distributor for a product in Georgia, you don't control it for Florida or Tennessee or Texas. And yet these companies in Nassau, they have these distributorship over Inagua to, like, who gives them that right? And the only way these things happen is because as leaders, we have not taken such bills to Parliament. And I understand the lobbying that takes place with these things, but we have to be deliberate in this way to reduce the cost of living on our citizens, to empower them more. And then, not paying so much as token gestures to agriculture and fisheries. We can invest more to create wealth of saying, you know what, I want 10 Bahamians with 20 acres of Persian lime to stop the import of such and such in the country. We have to be like the United States. You'll hear how Trump then brag about how much billions they give to the farmers in Iowa or Nebraska. But again, you can see your Kellogg's cornflakes on the shelf in the Bahamas, Jamaica, they're in Barbados. So the U.S. brings in hundreds of billions of dollars from food, but their farmers are the big producers.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we can be very deliberate in empowering our people in these areas, but we have to invest heavily in the maritime sector, invest heavily in getting this information in our education system, and giving Bahamians almost instantly a sense of real ownership through the resources that are currently being extracted that really should be to the benefit of all the citizens. And that is not, Dale, in going against how the private sector has to function with profits. You know what I mean? So now no one's coming in to you, Dale, who has 10 trucks who are carrying limestone and say, the government's coming to take over your operation. We're simply saying these mineral resources belong to the citizen. And if you are going to make a profit from them, clearly the citizen should get, something out of the deal at the end of the day. Yeah.
Right. And if the business is productive, then fine. But if the business is being harmful to the nation, then by all means, I think a government should either put it out of business, or take it over and make it
You got
an
it.
essential service.
That's a very good point. You're right. Put it out of business.
I would, yeah. So I wouldn't just be a blanket scenario. You have to evaluate things, and that's what I think we tend not to do. Or we evaluate it, but we tend to then be shy at pulling the trigger of what is necessary to evolve things or transform things.
That's a powerful point you just made, and you see that happen too often. That's what have us in not a good situation, because I think your point uh, the majority of cases, that is what is happening. You know what I mean? We we know the solutions, but we'll talk around it and never actually, we'll talk about the litter on the coastline, but what are we actually doing about it?
Yeah.
We'll talk
And
about the
sometimes we have the ideas as to what to do, but we don't know how to execute it. Right?
yes, the
So because
execution.
we don't tap into the people who have the expertise to do it, because we
Yes.
feel that we could do everything ourselves. That is something, but I mean that's a show for itself. So my significant question for the day, because this is what the show is all about. For the young people, Bahamians particular, but young people in the Bahamas, and I consider Bahamians to be anybody in the Bahamas who is productively contributing to our culture and the development of the Bahamas. So you don't have to be born here or you don't have to be a citizen, but you're still a Bahamian. To me, that's my
Mhm.
definition of Bahamian. Now,
Yeah,
there's
Mr.
certain
Penland,
rights
Mr.
that
Penland always
exist.
said Bahamian is one who is heart and soul.
Who
That's a
is what?
powerful way to put it. Yeah, you care
Is
about the
one?
place.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
A Bahamian is one who is heart and soul.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah. I
exactly
would
what
agree
you're
with that.
saying in a roundabout way.
Yeah,
You know.
I would agree with that. So, what is the one concrete opportunity you would encourage them to explore if they want to help build the new built environment? We didn't talk about the new built environment, and I'll just put up on the screen real quick. But those are the pillars of the new built environment, right? And we talked about the individual things as we went along, and we didn't get to every island, but there's a wealth more. And I will ask you if you could list them, then I could post them on the site below afterwards. Not list them now, but list them, and send them to me, and I'll post a screen like this, so we'll have what it is, so forth, right? And the new built environment is basically is a political, economic, and social environment of our society formulated through intentional thought. You hear me say that over and over and over and over and over again. Intentional thought and action, designed to create the greatest opportunity to build the highest quality of life for our citizens, residents, and those subscribing to and supporting the culture of the 242, and which will provide sustainability for generations to come. And that's what we all about here, right? So
Dale,
let
I
me look at the
want to,
question again, right? Go ahead.
yeah, go on the question.
Now so we look at the question again and say, what is one concrete opportunity? Because Bahamas sometimes get overwhelmed, all these different things, and so forth. So if they focus on one thing, particularly the youth that we talk about, the Gen Ys and Zs, one thing that will encourage them to explore, if they want to help build this environment of being sustainable wealth.
Yes, I would say the Bahamians, and not everyone, is to look at the potential of the maritime industry, which
Okay.
most of the country is made up of. And that doesn't mean you have to be a captain,
Yeah, I
but
agree with
there's
that.
so
Yeah.
many opportunities in that space that it's kept like the military secret. There, you would be shocked to see the thousands of persons in here from South Africa, from all over the world, engage in meaningful income in our country that they don't want the average Bahamian to even know this world exists.
Right.
Okay? So the maritime has many different, think of it just like your hand. You
Right.
have many different avenues
Right.
of potential. So even if you say, I'm an attorney in the maritime space, or I'm an accountant in the maritime space, or I'm directly a captain, an engineer, the list goes on with opportunities. And the highest form, a marine pilot, OMV, most of the goods and services travel in the world by ships. So maritime isn't going away. And the Bahamas geography with 700 islands, 2,300 keys, the deliberate misinformation fed to our people, Dale, I want to see and encourage more what you're doing, because I'm going to highlight the island of Maguana. It's just rich with granite, and yet 99% of our citizens have no idea that granite even exists in the Bahamas. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have these reports in my possession.
Wow.
And I would like to give mention to many unsung heroes in the Bahamas, like yourself. And you're definitely in that number because of what you're doing. You and I could be doing our own selfish agendas, but we're taking the time out. There are 3 Bahamians who I know who have been working along with Minister Miller, who has been very active in trying to help set up a mining department so that the country will benefit from the resources. They passed a historic mining bill in April of last year.
Okay.
There are many Bahamians in the system like that who are doing their part to make the Bahamas better. I can tell you there's a customs officer, I like to call his name publicly. He's retired now. His name is William Poitier.
Okay.
And I remember when I went to cabinet about 24 years ago, he was very helpful in helping with all the data with the boats that come in the country. And very instrumental, that information was making the adjustment in the fee from $20 to $300, which was nothing. But still, think of the revenue that the country benefit because of the decision of a single custom officer who took the time out. And they are in immigration. They are all through the systems, individuals who are committed to nation building like that. But I just wanted to highlight the work that you're doing and those other persons are doing, that's, and to encourage those who are listening to realize that you individually can do your part, which is equally as important. And we just pointed out the preamble. Imagine if someone listening to us say, I'm going to take that project on to get it into the school.
Right.
You see what I mean? And the next person say, I can do my part. I'm going to start the program of picking up 1 piece of trash a day. And I remember fishing a guide from Texas. They said, in this particular area in Texas, they started that program, right? And just within a matter of months, before your eyes, you can see the changes. Yeah. So, we're a young country.
Yeah.
There's a lot more work to do, but we need more and more people to take the time to make their contribution like what you're doing here.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate people like yourselves coming on in order to share, to make it meaningful. Because, that's part of my purpose on it, is to do things that are meaningful. I've been told that a long time ago. I didn't realize it before, many years ago, but along the journey, it clicked, and I could see what people were talking about, and so then I tried to formulate solutions, being an engineer, to make it reach more people. So, but one of the things I always say when I designed the new built environment was that it could be $100 billion economy.
Yes.
Based on what you explained last time and this time,
Yes.
I wonder if I need to make this $100 trillion economy.
But we know the resources are here, but again, it's sustainably using them. But you're right, in terms of our population, even taking our country to 50 to 100 billion, we would have a dramatic shift. Because they'll think about it. In 1991, when I look back the national debt of the Bahamas was 800 and something million. Today it's 13 billion. So we have to have a different approach,
Yep.
the kind of approach that you're helping to bring to the forefront here. Because you can't just say that if the prime minister who served for 25 years added for 800 and something million, and then a few guys came back in their 25 years and went from less than a billion to 13 billion. I mean, really? Have you been running a successful business?
Everybody be fired. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They have wasted so much resources, and and I'll be even more than fair and say, imagine out of the 13 billion, if 8 or 9 billion of that went to infrastructure, salaries, and so forth. So what happened to the 3+ billion in wastage and cronyism and side deals?
Right. But I'll tell you one of the biggest wastage. I don't have the numerical information for it, but just my, as they say, what they say in basketball, the side test is this issue of 5 and outs and changing, and then a whole new agenda happens instead of following some national plan where it just is continuity from administration to administration to administration.
But you're right. It's just a new set of cronies coming along to get their contracts and side deals.
Yeah, but I mean, even if we take that out, it's just the mere fact that if I'm going along the way, building this road, and all of a sudden now, you tell me I gotta stop building that road, or I must dig up that road and start paving it with some other type of tile or whatever. All of that is what happened to that investment that was there before. That goes to waste. And then we wonder why we escalate from up to the $13 billion that you talk about, right?
Well, Dale, can I ask a question? On this platform you have, are you able to share screen?
You share the screen? And
Yeah,
say, so what you
like
mean?
for example, when I come back, let's say we talk about the significance of the
Oh
poor.
yeah, if you could put stuff up on the screen,
Yeah.
man, yeah.
I would like for the really, and we share it wide and far to get Bahamians to understand what is really at stake in this upcoming election, because I have gone through 7 changes of administrations fighting these issues, and we're at a very pivotal point here. That's how serious
Yeah.
this particular election is.
Yeah. And so, like I said, with the new built environment, we have the 5 pillars. And it's not sunshine and sea from a tourist point of view, as we have been focused on for all these years, but it's from renewable energy, cultivating light industries, food security, etc., from the sun, and then from the sea is all the uncharted ventures and sustainability of we may even have the blue economy tourism, where people could be filming what happens down deep, because some people, like you say, are scared to go down there, but they can get that experience and they'll pay for that experience. Because we only travel for experience. We don't travel to stay in a hotel room or build these massive hotels and stuff like that people stick on, and then they wonder why the cruise ship people don't spend more money.
Dale, I could tell you, a guy called me the other day and he said, Prescott, enormous submarines is becoming in here doing these deep dives, extracting stuff in our waters that we don't even know about.
That's the next thing, right? So we have to bring you back. It ain't be before Easter, that's for sure. But we'll pick a time somewhere in the time, and then I got to track you down too, because you be all over the world. But the good thing about digital is you wherever you are in the world, you could still do the program.
Exactly.
You could just connect.
Yes.
And so forth. But the blue economy is something that I think this new administration coming in has to focus. When I say new administration, every administration after election is new. But we need to make this a focal point. I know we talk about the orange and stuff like that, but to me the blue can hire and pay in entrepreneurship and in job, make all of our people, what's the word I'm looking for, where they don't have to be hurting their head every night trying to figure out whether they can meet the raw beat of the paper, all this kind of thing, right? So
you're absolutely right.
I think we have it. We just need to be intentional about the process and design systems so that they all could work in synergy for the benefit of the nation. So I want to thank you for joining us today on something to think about, and look forward to bringing you back, and also look forward to coming down there and Andrews, because I was hoping to do that before I brought you on the first time, but things just...
Well, I look forward to y'all making that historic trip here. So we got to make that happen.
Yeah.
And we could something to think about here in Andros, when you come down.
There you go. You might, some people might not want to leave because when they see Andros, they spend a month and a half in Andros building a couple of exchanges. So
well, you could do one of your shows from here. Tell them something to think about in Andros.
There you go.
Or we sit on the dock and have some conch salad and conch fritters and, look at that view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for having me, and look forward to us having some other dialogue, getting some of those young Bahamians who to really tune into some of these things we're talking about of all age. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Whether you're 20 or whether you're 90, it's all important.
Yeah. But like I told somebody to work last week, you say, I'm not fighting to try and pave a way for myself. And so, those things that you all have to fight for and make sure you're seen and get value, return on your value for what you input and stuff like that. I did 30 years of that. And so what I'm doing now as a consultant, I just adding value to what you all and try to help make you all become better equipped to be able to be productive, etc. And the nation grow. So, not saying you don't need cash, because everybody needs cash. People out there don't fool me. As a consultant, we always still need the cash. You got to live. And we live in a cash society. So thank you kindly. Say hello to my good classmate Ben Reed for me, and let him know I coming down there soon.
Okay then.
He probably tell me he had so much time.
Okay, I will do that. But he'll be excited to see you down here.
Yeah.
Y'all is Queens College classmates.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Small world, eh?
Yep. All right. So
all right, take care.
Be in touch. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
So folks, you thinking about what we declared? That no life shall be frustrated by deprivation? Tonight, we identified real opportunities in our land, in our sea, in our skills, and in our systems. We saw that ownership is no longer a dream. It is structure. It is intentional designed. It is enabled. So, the question is no longer what we have. The question is how we will strengthen stewardship, structure access responsibility, build scalable ownership, align our natural resources with sovereign interests, because sovereignty is not preserved by words. It is preserved by action. Sovereignty demands stewardship. Sovereignty demands ownership. Something to think about. Peace.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242